Hello dear students and welcome to this lecture on flowering and photoperiodism. In this lecture we will talk about what we mean by flowering and photoperiodism, and subsequently we will talk about the importance of flowering and photoperiodism, and then the focus of our discussion would be types or classification of plants on the basis of response to light, and lastly we will talk about the underlying mechanisms behind flowering and photoperiodism. Well, so for the question what exactly we mean by flowering and photoperiodism is concerned, as you know, juvenility is an age or a physiological state of the plant before flower differentiation, in which it is unable to flower even if the plant grows in an ideal environment for flowering. So, flowering represents the transition from a juvenile or vegetative to a reproductive phase and is controlled by complex and highly regulated genetic pathways. In many plants, the time of flowering is strongly influenced by photoperiodism or the day length, which synchronizes the flower or floral transition with the favorable season of the year. In fact, photoperiodism is the response by an organism to synchronize its body with changes in day length. In other words, photoperiodism is the biological measurement of the relative lengths of days and nights by plants so as to modulate their developmental programs to maximize adaptation to different environmental factors. This photoperiodism is a widespread phenomenon found in both plants and animals that allows these organisms to adapt to seasonal change in their environment. And evolution of endogenous mechanisms to sense the periodic change in environmental factors such as day length and temperature, as I said, results in the circadian clocks which allow plants to anticipate environmental fluctuations and tune their response accordingly. And how plants monitor environmental cues and trigger the initiation of flowering at the right season has been the question of interest for plant biologists for decades together. The duration of day length, as you know, changes with a predictable pattern along the year, thereby providing a reliable environmental signal for varying seasons. And the importance of day length in controlling seasonal responses so far is concerned, if you go back to the history, it was first proposed by Ternios and Klebs back in early 1900s. These researchers, while working independently, suggested that the duration rather than the quantity of light is a major determinant in plant development. However, it was Garner and Allard in 1920 who observed that the Biloxi variety of soya beans, scientifically known as Glycine max, and Maryland Mammoth variety of tobacco, scientifically known as Nicotiana tabacum, could be made to flower only when the daily exposure to the light was reduced below certain critical duration. These scientists, while using controlled photoperiodic conditions, not only showed for the first time that day length can determine the time of flowering, but also proposed that flowering would only occur if the duration of the daily light period was sufficiently short. These scientists accordingly classified plants into three major photoperiodic groups as per their flowering response to day length. and their classification includes long day plants, short day plants and day neutral plants. So for the long day plants are concerned, in these plants flowering is promoted by daily periods of light longer than a critical day length. These plants in fact require usually 14 to 16 hours in a 24-hour cycle for subsequent flowering, and they are also known commonly as short night plants. In these long day plants, the light period is critical, and a brief exposure to light in the dark period, or in other words, prolongation of the light period, stimulates flowering. The best examples of long day plants include henbane, scientifically called as Hyoscyamus niger, or spinach, Spinacia species, and sugar beet, Beta vulgaris. In contrast, so for the short day plants are concerned, these are the plants that accelerate flowering in response to day length below a critical threshold. The short day plants require a relatively shorter daylight period, usually 8 to 10 hours, and a continuous dark period of about 14 to 16 hours for subsequent flowering. Some examples of such short day plants include Biloxi variety of soya beans, scientifically known as Glycine max, or Nicotiana tabacum, and Cocklebur, Xanthium stromarium. Dear students, it is important to note that in short day plants, the dark period is critical and must be continuous. Even a brief disruption of this dark period by light in the wavelength of around 660 to 665 micrometers will not allow flowering at all to take place. Maximum inhibition of flowering with red light occurs at about the middle of the critical dark period. However, such inhibitory effects of red light can be overcome by a subsequent exposure with far red light, a phytochrome mediated response, which we will be talking about subsequently. If light period is, however, interrupted with red light, there is no inhibitory effect on flowering in short day plants, but prolongation of the continuous dark period initiates early flowering in short day plants. And if you look at a third major category of these plants, what are called as day neutral plants. Day neutral plants flower the same time irrespectively of the photoperiodic conditions. In other words, these plants flower in all photoperiods ranging from 5 hours to 24 hours, continuous exposure I mean. Some of the examples of these day neutral plants include tomato, Lycopersicon esculentum, what scientifically is called as, or sunflower, Helianthus anus, and of course cotton, Gossypium herbaceum, and so on. In addition to these major categories, recently some other categories have been included. They include, for example, long short day plants and short long day plants. The long short day plants include those short day plants which must be exposed to long days during early periods of growth for subsequent flowering. For example, Bryophyllum. While as the later category includes those long day plants which must be exposed to short day during early periods of growth for subsequent flowering. For example, wheat, triticum, or rye, what is called as sea kale. So dear students, according to these responses, some models have been developed, what are called as the models of photoperiodic response. There are two classical models. One is called as the hourglass model, and this hourglass model is one of the first and simplest models proposed to explain the photoperiodic response of plants on the basis of behavior of phytochrome, which exists in two forms, PR and PFR. According to this model, gradual accumulation of a substance is required to trigger a physiological response, and the amount of this chemical can increase up to a threshold level only in photoperiodic inductive conditions. However, during the night, the PFR form of the phytochrome converts back to the PR. You must know during the day, PR converts to PFR. And PR is a form which is needed for the release of the flowering signal. That means florigen, which is commonly called as. For instance, let me tell you, the cocklebur needs 8.5 hours of darkness for conversion of all its PFR present at sunset into PR and carry out the subsequent reactions, leading ultimately to the release of the flowering signal or florigen. If this process is somehow interrupted by a flash of 660 nanometer light, the PR is immediately reconverted to PFR and the night's work is almost undone. But a subsequent exposure to far-red, that means 730 nanometer light, this converts the pigment back to PR form, and the steps which lead to the release of florigen, a flowering hormone, as you know. One important point you also must note is that exposure to intense far-red light at the beginning of the night sets the clock ahead about 2 hours or so by eliminating the need for the spontaneous conversion of PFR to PR. Hence, in the case of photoperiodic flowering, increasing the length of darkness should either promote in short day plants or inhibit, in long day plants, the accumulation of a product that ultimately results in the flowering induction. According to the hourglass model, once threshold duration is reached, further increments should have no consequences on flowering. However, the analysis of the floral responses of many plant species to cycles of 8 hours of light and increasing hours of darkness provides strong evidence for the involvement of a circadian system in the measurement of the photoperiodic time. In contrast to the predictions of the hourglass model, the floral response fluctuates rhythmically under these conditions, and a maximum response is achieved every time the total length is 24 hours or a multiple of it, whereas at intermediate cycle lengths the response is much lower. In other words, understand it this way: it would be the presence or absence of the light at specific times of the day rather than the duration of the periods of the light or darkness that's important for photoperiodic responses. You mean the effect on flowering of night breaks is consistent with this view as well. Pulses of light during the night period can effectively prevent flowering in short day plants, and this floral response follows, as I said earlier, the circadian rhythms. So the problem with the hourglass model is that it fails to account for the fact that nighttime exposure to red light works even after 2 hours of darkness when all the PFR has already been converted to PR. Let me tell you that recent works support therefore an alternative model called as circadian clock model. So for this circadian clock model is concerned, it was postulated by Bunning way back in 1936, who proposed that the mechanism controlling daily movements in leaves or petals, subsequently named the what we call as circadian clocks, was also the basis of the photoperiodic time measurement. Most of the recent works conducted on the long day model plants such as Arabidopsis especially support this model of photoperiodism. And this recent work suggests that the photoperiodic response is governed mainly by interaction of daylight with innate circadian rhythms of the plant. Day length measurements depend on the ability of the plants to detect light and the existence of a time-keeping mechanism referred to as the circadian clock, which generates the rhythm with a period close to 24 hours and is responsive to light only at a particular phase of the cycle. Let me tell you that light is perceived by photoreceptors and represents the main input pathway to the biological clock, and that's why the pace of the clock is reset by light every day, allowing the progressive adjustments of the clock to the time of dawn or dusk, so that the mechanism of the oscillator remains synchronized with the external cycles of the light and darkness. Dear students, the control of flowering by day length is a determinant of seasonal pattern of flowering and is a process regulated by one or more of different output branches of a circadian clock. To measure day lengths and achieve this photoperiodic regulation, the core oscillator in molecular terms is said to determine the daily rhythms in output genes, and these can set the light sensitive phase for triggering the floral transition when plants are exposed to appropriate photoperiodic conditions. One of the important things you need to understand in this discussion is how light perception, photoperiodic stimulus and floral hormone generation are linked. It's well established that the photoperiodic stimulus is perceived by leaves, resulting in the production of a floral hormone which is translocated to the apical tip of the plant to initiate floral primordial response. This can be demonstrated by a simple experiment which you can also do, for example, on cocklebur, Xanthemum pensylvaticum, which is a short day plant. The plant will not flower, or you can say in other words, this short day plant will flower if it has been previously kept under the short day conditions. If the plant is however defoliated and then kept under short day conditions, it will not flower. So if a cocklebur plant, whether defoliated or not, is kept under long day conditions, it will not flower. But if even only one of its leaves is exposed to short day conditions and the rest are under long day conditions, flowering will still take place. Since photoperiod is measured in the leaves but the flowering response is evoked in the distal meristems, the existence of a mobile signal termed as the florigen was postulated long back. And despite the unequivocal evidence for existence of a floral hormone like florigen, its understanding, in terms of nature and composition, has been by and large elusive hitherto. It's clear, however, that the floral hormone is a material substance which can be translocated from leaves to the apical tips, or in simpler words, the florigen can be defined in these terms as a graft transmissible substance that is generated in the leaves in response to photoperiodic inductive conditions and moves through the phloem to stimulate the initiation of flowering in the shoot apical meristem. Dear students, apart from all this discussion, very important for you is to understand the role of phytochrome. Plants have evolved an array of photoreceptors to detect light over a large range of fluences or fluence rates and wavelengths, including the phytochrome, which absorbs in the red and far red region of the spectrum. Phytochrome is ubiquitous in plants and has been isolated and purified as well. The quality of light is, however, very important in causing the appropriate photoperiodic response. If you can look at this situation, in other words, it has been seen that a brief exposure with red light during the critical dark period inhibits flowering in short day plants, and this inhibitory effect can be reversed by subsequent exposure with far-red light. Likewise, prolongation of the critical day period or interruption of the dark period stimulates flowering in long day plants. What does this indicate? This indicates that there should be a pigment responsible for this that absorbs red light. In other words, the pigment which should be in color blue-green. This pigment is basically the mechanism capable of recognizing changes in day length, and this is what is called as phytochrome. As I said earlier as well, phytochrome exists in two versions or forms which are interconvertible: PR that absorbs red light and PFR which absorbs far red light. In the short day plants, PFR is converted during darkness to PR, which builds up and stimulates the phloriston to cause flowering. In contrast, in the long day plants, PR is converted into PFR during sunlight, which stimulates phloriston and causes flowering. In addition to the appropriate photoperiodic requirements, certain plants need a low temperature treatment during their earlier stages of the history, for subsequent flowering as well. This low temperature exposure for inducing flowering is called as vernalization, which was reported first by Kippard way back in 1857, but was termed as vernalization by Lysenko in 1928. Due to vernalization, the vegetative period of the plant is reduced to induce early flowering. Let me tell you that the cold stimulus in fact is perceived mainly by the apical meristem, though other parts of the plants are also reported to receive the stimulus, but it is believed that the cold stimulus results in formation of a floral hormone which is called as vernalin, which is in fact yet to be purified and characterized and isolated completely. But the important conditions that you require for vernalization, they include age and stage of the plant, appropriate low temperature, then duration of the exposure, oxygen, water, and so on. So with this, dear students, let me conclude with a note that flowering and photoperiodism is an interesting phenomenon in which a range of conditions, especially the hormones like phloriston, duration and the quantity of day length, and then the role of the phytochrome is for you very important to understand. And at the end of this lecture, I believe that you should be now able to easily define what you mean by flowering and photoperiodism, what exactly you mean by long day, short day, and the day neutral plants, and what are the other categories of plants on this basis of response, and then what exactly are the mechanisms lying behind the flowering and photoperiodism process. And finally, the role of phytochrome for you is very important to understand. So with this, I take your leave now until we meet in next lecture. Till then, goodbye.